Okay. Receive comments from the public. Is this a leave left over from before? Must be.
Yes.
Okay, so no. And we've acted on any requests for adjustments this month, okay? Okay, thanks. Okay, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion to accept.
I'll second.
Do we have any discussion? Any comments, anything on there? Tax collectors reports. There was a Google Drive document for the annual survey of wage rate scales. We have to adopt that. Just like everyone else does.
Every year, yeah.
Yeah. So you
Look
have-
at the wage rate
Okay.
scales and y'all always adopt the ones that the Department of Labor promulgates for Montgomery County.
Okay.
And the reason it isn't in your packet is because they're super long. It's a scale for a wage for every single type of construction worker.
Yeah. That's
So I think it was like over 100 pages. Oh,
And anything on the tax collectors report, anything to discuss there for anyone? If not, then we'll vote on the motion and the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passed. Consent agenda done. Thank you. We'll go to the Woodlands Division report. Jacinto River Authority.
I have quite a few items to cover, I think 4 or 5 different items. I'm gonna hit it on the high level, but if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll be glad to go into whatever level of detail you like. Start on page 19. This is the Woodlands and Illinois GRP monthly operations report. At the trustees meeting, Hugh asked some questions related to water loss and threw me for a loop there for a little bit. So I have some more information coming up here in a minute, but I did want to bring up in that analysis, we did find out that the top right, where it says rolling 12-month water loss, it shows a collective 5.50%. That is incorrect. It's actually 4.21%. I do not know the breakdown between the two, but I know it's right now the rolling 12-month is 4.21%.
Okay.
That's the only correction that we found in the monthly operations report. No violations and projects are progressing.
Okay.
Moving forward to page 31.
Is that just a typo or is there some math going on there that you checked on?
We can get information from different
Yeah,
places.
sure.
So I was pulling it from the old information, so we've since cut that off.
Okay.
Now, everything should come from only one place.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Remnants of the past.
Yeah, I understand.
So on page 31, this time of year, we do start the budget process with the MUDs. Our actual budget process starts around October when we start looking at the project plan, but this is the first time we are presenting information to the MUDs. So this presentation was presented to the audit committee, Woodlands Water, and the trustees. I'm going to hit a high level of what you see in here, but if you have questions, once again, just let me know. So there's 2 main things that we're going to talk about here. Going to be water demands, and then sewer demands. So with the water demands, we typically look at a 2 to 5 year average. 2-year average in this case includes 2 years of drought periods. So if I just look at the 2-year period, then productions are going to be high, sales are going to be high, but it's not going to be reflective of normal operation. That's also why we look at the 3-year, but then the 3-year has 2 years of the drought. So that's why we end up usually looking around a 5-year because it buffers out, down to average sales. So you'll see production, that's what we produce out of the ground and what we deliver from GRP, surface water. You'll see sales, that's the number that y'all get from your AMI meter system. The difference between those two is the water loss. And as you're looking back, and we kind of go into Hugh's question here a little bit on the trustees meeting, is how do we calculate the water loss? Because if you flip over to page, let's go to 35, you'll see the 2-year average for water loss all the way to the 5-year average for water loss, and it goes from about a 4% up to a 7%. Well, we're recommending a 5.21%. So how did we come up with a 5.21%? What's the calculation? So what I did was I went back and found some numbers that were incorrect on the rolling 12. The information in your packet is correct because I was using a different source, but that's where this handout comes in. And so going back and looking, you can see back in 2019 and 2020, leading into 2021, the demands or the water loss was a lot higher. So in 21 into 22 is when y'all completed the AMI meter system. So prior to the AMI meter system, the meters were essentially highly inaccurate. So we had budgeted an 8.5% water loss. After we started seeing the accurate meter counts come in, we started dropping down the water loss to where we are now, the budget of 5.5%. A little bit conservative, but also that because I think last year we were seeing about a 5%. So if you're looking at this, all the blue lines,
Sorry, you said, yeah, I think we saw last year 5%, 5 years in the 5% in the budget?
in the budget is 5.5%, actual was about 5%.
Okay. Fiscal year 23 on your chart here says 3.57.
So when the budget's done for 23, it was actually done in calendar year 22. So it's a little bit behind. So the data we were seeing is we needed to make sure we had the money in the bank. And so we were looking back and saying, okay, is this just a fluke or is this true and proper? And so we were conservative in 23. We were still, I think, at 7.5%, 7.5%, 8%. In 24 is when we dropped it down to 5.5% water loss. Looking at FY 24, or excuse me, FY 25, we looked at all these numbers, without these numbers, they were incorrect at the time. That's where we came in and said, okay, 5.21%, because that's what we were basing it off of originally. When you look at these numbers, FY 22, 23, and then on the far right, calendar year 23, which was the rolling 12, they're generally all right around, if not under 4%. And so we were presenting, and you'll see in here the 5.21%, but we figure that's too conservative at this point. So what we're going to do is look to drop it down to 4.5%. And what that does for you is if you look at the bottom down here, you see the 3-year average, 4-year average, 5-year average, 2-year, so on and so forth. When you go to a 4.5% average from the 5.21% water loss, that increases revenue by about $112,000 based off the FY 24 rate. So to recap, we were at a higher water loss in years past. Current budget is at 5.5%. Looking at data for a longer period of time, we feel comfortable going down to a 4.5% water loss, which in theory should increase revenue by $112,000 roughly using this year's rates. There's not an exact equation, and that's one thing I was always taught and I did not do. If you have an exact calculation, you're going to come up to 5.21%. This is still just a rough guess, an estimate, because you don't know what water loss is. So that number should be round, which is why we're going to a 4.5% instead of a 4.52. There's no equation to get us to 4.5%. We look at all the averages and say, okay, here's the averages, here's the actuals, this is the trend we're seeing. We could go down to 3.5%, but that's cutting it a little bit too close. 4.5% allows a little bit of buffer. So it is a guess to some degree, but it's also an educated guess. Does that help?
And Chris, you'd mentioned last week that we still have some time. I mean, the budget process is just starting. You'll get some more time and data under your belt here over the coming months.
Right.
And you can, say, yeah, you feel really good about it, or maybe, you can dial it in a little bit tighter or whatever. And when you finally set it, which is August or something, September.
So
July.
maybe when we present the draft budget, we'll still look at it a little bit after that.
Okay.
It's hard to change too much after we present it to y'all because we also present to our board and everybody else, and it's a big trickle effect. But we'll still look at it. If there's a major swing, then I'll talk to accounting to see if there's something we can do. But on that note, the numbers you see here are our recommendation as of today using 2023 numbers and averages up to then. When we get to May, we're gonna have another 4 months of data, plus your new winter averaging factored in. So if we can adjust these numbers and have justification, we're gonna adjust them. I don't see the numbers going down. I only see them going up slightly. For example, the water loss, when it goes from 5.21% down to 4.5%, production will stay the same, but your sales will increase. So when you look on page 35 and you see the sales at 5.296 billion gallons per year, that number, when I go from 5.21 to 4.5, that sales number goes up. So since last Wednesday, we've already had one change.
Chris, just to be clear,
Yeah.
when you, from fiscal year 21 to 22, when you saw the significantly less water usage or loss rather, that had nothing to do, there was no repairs in the system or anything. It was just how you're tracking.
So the main thing was the AMI system. Bless you. That was the main driver of the entire thing. There's been things that we've done on the wholesale side forever and a day. You still have a lot of leaks, but one of the biggest things is we no longer flush the wells to the ground. So the wells, to keep sand out of the tanks and everything, we would basically waste that water, flush it onto the ground for a few thousand gallons a week or so, and that add up with 38 wells and flush the tanks, turn them over and everything else.
Yeah.
We stopped a lot of those practices and we just let the water go into the ground storage tank and then the sand settle out because there's not nearly as much sand. And then you can clean it out once every 10 years instead of wasting, 200 million gallons of water. So there's little bitty practices we've done here and there. I think y'all have made some changes on the way you flush your hydrants. It's not as long, but it still meets criteria. So little tweaks here and there equal up to it, but the biggest thing is the AMI system.
Okay. So there's not going to be, there's nothing drastic you could do in future years to try to bring the loss number down.
At this point, don't see anything. When we drain ground storage tanks and elevated storage tanks, water towers, for example, we don't just open it up and dump 1 million gallons on the ground. We let the system take as much as it can, then only waste, 50,000 gallons or so. So little tweaks. Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks for looking back into this. Appreciate it.
No, you stumped me, and I appreciate it. That's what
One of my goals every month is to see if I can stump you. Yeah, just once a month. That's all.
I do appreciate it though, because we're human, we make mistakes, so y'all point out stuff. We can't answer it.
Good. Thank you.
Page 36, this is the general process of setting the surface to groundwater blend ratio. So basically, this is a GRP process that the Woodlands Division, or the Woodlands MUDs have a part of. So keep in mind that if the Woodlands says y'all want a 50% surface water to groundwater blend ratio, that's a recommendation that Mike takes to the GRP review committee, who then votes on the blend ratio for the Woodlands, as well as all the other entities, the other 6 entities receiving surface water. So if you ask for 50%, you may not get 50%. Mike's been very good the last few years getting the review committee to agree to 50%. I don't see why that would change. I just throw it out there because there is always a chance that the review committee or the board or somebody else can say, no, I need adjusted blend ratios.
Why would they change the ratio?
So as population increases, so does demand.
Okay.
The GRP plant is right now stuck at 13 million gallons a day per the review committee. So if there's more demand on the surface water and they say, well, long story short, right now I have to raw Peter to pay Paul. So at 13 million gallons, I cannot go above. So I have to take some from each and every other participant receiving surface water. Right now they're 35%. The bulk of them are going to go down to 30% because that other 5% goes to the Woodlands to keep y'all at 50-50. So as the population grows, demands increases, then they're going to go down and you are going to go up. And so eventually, if you keep down that path, then you're going to have some people that knocked off from surface water and y'all getting all the surface water. It's not the intent of the entire thing. So we're starting those discussions with the review committee this month because ultimately, sometime the plant has to increase production to about 16 at least.
What is it? What can it do?
30.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
28, 29 reliably, but 30 is design.
And the 13, if we could just kind of refresh ourselves that if I wanted to get 15, I have to start up kind of a whole nother part of the plant and I'm going to incur a lot more cost to just get another 2. You want to bring on pretty big chunks and use it.
So
Is
the
that- I
biggest
think of it
driver
that way.
is every 3 million gallons that you increase capacity,
Mhm.
it costs about $2 million.
Okay.
Up until 19 million gallons. So right now we're 13. So if I go to 19,
Mhm.
$4 million more for 6 million gallons. Once you hit 19 million gallons on an annual average, let me back up a little bit. So Lake Conroe, 2/3, City of Houston, 1/3, River Valley, right? The 1/3 is worth about 19 million gallons a day of GRP water. If I go to 20 million gallons a day, 19 million is bought by the River Authority water, which is cheaper. The other 1 million gallons a day is bought by the City of Houston Water, which is double-ish the rates. So therefore, if I'm 20 million gallons a day, the whole rate has to increase more than just $2 million. So 19 million gallons a day at this point would be relatively the sweet spot for about 4 million gallons a day. 4 million.
Interesting. Okay, right.
Frustrating.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother topic, I guess,
Yeah.
but we'll let it go for that.
So on page 37 is the sewer demands. So just like we talked about the water demands, we look at a 2 to 5 year average, say, okay, where's the winter averaging? What number looks appropriate for basically sales of wastewater? This early in the process, we see that the 2 year and 3 year are higher than the 4 and 5 year. So we're splitting the difference and recommending 2.8 at this point in time. As we get more data, see how your winter averaging comes in, see how the treatment's going, so on and so forth, that number may be adjusted upwards. Don't think I'm going to go to the 2 year average of 2.9 roughly. I'm thinking we may end up around the 2.85, maybe 2.75 range. But get more data, refine, but right now it's staying just like it is in FY24.
Is the trend kind of flat on that? I know your 2 year average is 2.8, your 4 is 2.7, so it'd make it seem like maybe it was lower before, but it's increasing, but maybe not. I don't know.
So the winter averaging is increasing slightly, say, well, from what you can see here. On the treatment side, it's slightly increasing, but not nearly as much as the winter averaging is. So you're selling more than you're treating, if that makes sense. Keep in mind though, I know it's during the winter time, but your winter average is based off of water sales.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's why you do it in December, January, February. But during a drought, you have less rain, so people still want to water. So during a drought, your winter averaging could be a little bit higher because people are watering, even in the winter, whatever reason.
Seems to me that people become more aware of the winter averaging program, that they really try to pay more attention to it, that might start coming down.
I would agree.
I would think. We're paying attention to it.
That's the part of such a sewer bill.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, so then over the next few pages, we talk about various things. On page 39, this is the electrical usage. There's a lot of conversation that Ed and Hugh had at the trustees meeting about this, but the direction so far from our finance committee and our board is to take the rolling 12-month actuals plus 10% to get the FY25 electrical budget. That budget right now is about 3.8 million. Rolling 12 is about 2.9. Or 10% on the 2.9. It's a rough reduction in the electrical cost of about 500,000 per year. Now I know Ed's going to go back and talk to the board and the finance committee to see if that 10% is set in stone or if there's any flexibility as time goes on based on the discussion of natural gas going down. But at this point, this is the direction I have, is plus 10%.
Okay.
Page 40 is the chlorine usage. Same general premise as the electrical. We look at the actuals plus 5 to 7%. That 5 to 7% is an estimate. That is only going to be increased based off of what the vendor tells us. So if the chlorine vendor says, hey, he's going to have a 3% price increase, I take actuals plus 3%. Caveat being is if any new demands are coming online, if there's any modifications to production that's needed, that'll be factored in as well. But if everything stays status quo, it'll be actual cost plus whatever the vendor increases.
Chris,
Yes.
back a slide on the utilities. You buy just market priced energy power, I assume?
We do.
Do you ever hedge?
We talked about it before. I don't know if anything ever came. I can circle back and see what.
Just curious if it-
I'm new purchasing manager.
Big spend. There might be
It's a
some,
big spend. I just don't know. They looked into it quite a bit because it's with Entergy and that's a realm I'm not even familiar with. We talked about selling power back, running generators. We talked about a lot of different options, but I think we're on our third or fourth purchasing manager since I've been here. So let me circle back with him and see if he's had some recent thoughts about that, unless y'all know something.
you probably can't, as far as I know, you probably can't hedge directly with Entergy because they're a utility, they're regulated.
Right.
But you might be able to buy some there might be some tools you could buy maybe from a bank to hedge it.
Put it out there and see what they can find and look into. So be good, be good. Page 41 is just some high level projects that we know is on the list. The first one is televising some sewer mains for $100,000. Basically, in the project plan currently, there are some sewer lines set to be rehabbed next year. We're going to postpone those 1 year, do another condition assessment on those to assess if they do need to be done in 26 or if we can push them out further. Second item is a Senate bill that requires additional modification and review so we can make sure we stay in compliance. All right, so then page 42 is just more high level insurance, merit increases, stuff that we're looking at. These percentages you see here are set just like the electrical, which is that came down from the finance committee. This is where we want it to be. All right, any questions on the budget guidelines, demands? Okay. Page 45. This is the excess funds memo that we occasionally have. We had one last year. We have one this year. Excess funds are defined in the resolution as basically at the end of the fiscal year, and after the audit is complete, any money that is above and beyond what was required for the budget. And there's other parameters that we can go into. They're all lined out here. At the end of FY23 and after the audit, there's $5.1 million excess funds left over. So there's three real options. There's two options and a hybrid option. One option is it can be refunded to the MUDs in your pro rata share of your FY23 water sales. And that is on page 48. Second option is that y'all could vote to allow the River Authority to keep those funds, and then we show you the projects that we're going to use those funds on. Third option that has not been done before, but is a possibility, is a hybrid option where you refund some of it to yourselves and then you allow us to keep some of it. And then whatever you allow us to keep, those projects remain. So you get it, we get it, hybrid option. So what we've done, refund is pretty cut and dry. States water sales goes back. If y'all allow us to keep it, on page 45 and 46 are basically just numbered projects, very high level snippets of what that project is. You start on page 49 and go after that, there's one page per item that goes into more detail about what that item is. On a high level, the first item is the emergency reserve. The emergency reserve resolution states that it is to maintain a certain balance and be increased each year by a engineering news record CPI increase. We have not been doing that because the inflation and the interest have been keeping up. Last few years, it has skyrocketed. So this request is a contractual request to honor the contract to just increase the emergency reserve to the proper amounts. Emergency reserve is right now 2.2. We're looking to take it about 2.6. And this is for any major projects that come up. Instead of doing a cash call to the MUDs, let's say we have a basin wall fall or a massive water line failure, sewer line failure or something, these funds are on hand to get that project started and hopefully completed. Second item is the AC water line condition assessment. This was talked about quite a bit last year. This was a MUD requested item. The budget that you see here is 1.6 million. The original conversations last year, the estimates were 3 to 3.5 million in over 3 to 4 years. This 1.6 million is a one and done. There is no additional work after this is done unless there's something special that comes from it. But this is not a phased approach. This is not we're asking for 1.6 this year. Next year, we're going to throw it in the budget for 2 million. 1.6 million, the entire condition assessment is done. This number, this phase and everything is based on the scope of work that I passed out prior to the meeting. And it was put together with Woodlands Water, our engineering staff, and then the consultant HDR. And it's done a lot of book writings, articles, presentations, conferences, so on and so forth. You'll see 1.6 million on the request for funding. On the scope of work, you will see just over a little bit over $1 million. The $1 million covers the non-destructive testing, the lab testing for the destructive testing, and the engineering, management, and analysis. The other roughly $600,000 that we're requesting is for the excavation of the destructive and potentially non-destructive testing sites. Because we have to get into the ground somehow and pull the samples out. So that's going to cost money to dig it up, pull it, keep on out, repair the line, and put it back in service. AC water lines, 1.6 million, MUD requested item, done in about 1 year to get done. So we're hoping to start at the beginning of April and it'll be done about next June. Next project, Town Center Waterline easements. The attempt with this is we are nearing completion of design. We've identified the easements that are needed, both permanent and temporary construction easements. These funds will go towards the purchasing of both the temporary construction and the permanent easements needed for this project. The attempt is secure every easement that we need, get all design done, so that way whenever the mud is ready to move forward, then the project is what we call shovel ready, so you can go ahead and move forward. If we don't do the easements now, then whenever the MUDs decide to go forward with Town Center Waterline easement, we'll need 6 months to a year minimum to collect the easements at that point in time. And during that time frame, somebody else could get the easements and we may have to redesign. Looking to move forward with Town Center Waterline easements to complete basically full design and acquisition of property. Item number 4 is wastewater plant 2's grid classifier. This is replacing an item that was original construction to the facility. The original one was a galvanized metal that lasted about 18 years. Galvanized metal in sewer does not last, and so it corroded. We tried a Band-Aid for a few years. It did not work, and it does not work. It's currently off. So this replacement, this project was part of a current project, the wastewater treatment plant number 2 headworks project. That project was going to be over budget, so we removed this item from it, completed the rest of it. It's currently underway right now. Now we're looking to complete the project with these extra funds. Last item is the 242 TxDOT lane adjustments. I'm sure y'all know TxDOT is widening 242 lanes, culverts, detention ponds, and all that. Our lines are sitting in the right of way, not in a dedicated easement. And so as TxDOT comes through and is putting in their storm sewers, we have to adjust some of our lines. We have 4 lines in 2 locations that need to be adjusted vertical and horizontally. And so these funds will pay for the construction and the moving of those lines so TxDOT can go through and take care of their. Try to hit it quick, still long. Yes, ma'am.
I'm confused about these easements because I thought when we put something in, or SJRA put something in, we had the easement and that was it. And it was ours. And that's the end of it. We can go in whenever we want to.
Not always the case.
Okay.
So a lot of these lines, especially when they're put in the mid 70s, early 80s and stuff, they would get the easement first, then put in the line, and the contractor would not always put the line where it's supposed to go. And so the easement may be here, but the line may be here. And so also in some cases, there is a picture, I believe, showing one of them on 51. Doesn't copy very well. But when the line was originally put in, Zoe's Kitchen used to be off of Lake Woodlands and Grove's Mill, that HEB shopping center.
Yes.
That line over there dips down basically in their parking lot and comes back up. And so as part of the redesign, we don't want that because if you have water line right there under cars and you pay for the car and everything else.
Mhm.
So in this case, we're going to take that line and put it back on Lake Woodlands so it goes straight across the road. So you have some lines that were not in easements originally, some that had no easements, and then realignment of those lines themselves.
So if we have a line that was put in improperly and not in the easement,
Mhm.
we don't automatically get an easement where it is.
No,
That's our problem.
right.
Okay.
And so that's a good point. There is 30 new permanent easements needed out of, I don't know, maybe a couple hundred or so, would you say? It's 100. So the vast majority of them, we already have the easements for. This is just correcting the spots here and there that we don't have
Okay.
easements.
Okay. I see better. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Says there's 30 new and 20 temporary.
The temporary are needed for construction, staging, more pits.
Has anybody asked TxDOT on this, on the 242 request? Has TxDOT volunteered any money? Anybody ask them?
If you're in your own dedicated easement, they'll fight, but they'll pay for it. But if you're in the right of way, you have no say. You have to move it.
TxDOT's a little bit of a different scenario than like the easements we're talking about a lot.
Oh, yeah, entirely different. They have the ultimate say in everything.
TxDOT actually will just send you a letter that says you have 90 days to move.
So this last one, sounds like we have to fund that.
That one's going, it's already been designed. We're gonna be hoping the next 30, 60
But they
days.
do correlate. Because if you have the easements, that doesn't happen in the future. Whether it's county road or FM road or whatever, it doesn't matter. if you have easements, generally you're not gonna have to move it if someone decides to expand the roadway. If they decide to expand the roadway and you're in an easement and not in the right of way, because you're allowed to be in the right of way, but you also take some risk there. If you're in an easement and they need to go beyond that, then they would theoretically help pay to move the
Yeah.
line. Or, because you're not gonna want it now under the lane if they do truly expand. So you would want to move it and you'd say, my line's at an easement. You want that area, you're gonna need to pay to move it. But that's the criticality in my opinion, through all my years, is that I'd rather have a dedicated water line easement or dedicated sewer easement, whatever the
Yeah.
case may be. But you don't have it across the whole system.
Just part of their design process to know where all these things are. Okay.
So if we don't
Yeah.
refund of the projects that don't appear to be discretionary, like that you have to do, then if you give us the money, then we just give it right back to you at some point then later on.
Exactly. So
In the meantime, would we get interest on it and you don't, or do you get interest and then it just goes towards the general funding anyway? So it's just kind of a mix, just a
so if it's
same difference.
in our general fund, so any interest there just helps offset anything in the future. Usually one of the easiest things to offset is, 3-month operating reserve. Every year is going to increase slightly with the operating expenses going up. And so any interest would just help offset a future rate increase based off of that. If y'all get the funds back, yeah, you get interest, you do whatever you want to with it. But of these items, discretionary would only really be item number 2, which is the AC waterline condition assessment, because that was MUD requested. The emergency reserve is contractual. The easements are needed at some point in time, so it's buy it now with the money on hand or pay for it later. The grid classifier was or the easements, yeah. The grid classifier is original OEM, so that would be in next year's budget, and TxDOT's being paid out of this year's budget, so.
But you're saying the 242 TxDOT deal with the town center water line easements are both required. They're gonna have to be bought at some point.
Right. Town center water line easements will need to be purchased at some point.
And the conversation we had at the trustee meeting is if we do the condition assessment, we come out, we don't need it for a decade. We don't need to touch those lines for a decade. If we bought something and acquired something we don't need or can't use, in the case of the permanent easements, I think Eric, you said, yeah, we gotta align things to where things are need to be. The permanent ones are needed. The temporary ones are needed for construction. If you're not doing construction for 10 years, can you hold them for 10 years? Or are you buying something you're just gonna have to redo? I think that's a question probably it's still outstanding. Or you said you could make a temporary easement for 10 years or 8 years.
I think the discussion was
It's a negotiation, right?
legally, I mean, I haven't seen that before, but I mean, I guess you can write anything into a contract, but in the easement language, you could temporary construction easement language, you could probably put some kind of date, it may, I don't know, or a deadline.
You could have an outside date or a
Yeah.
terminates upon X event happening.
Say to buy temporary easements and not use them, and then they expire because we just didn't get the date right. We didn't
Yeah.
nail the date right. And then you don't want to be, well, we're going to lose easements, better do the work. I mean, I don't want to be in that kind of situation, right? So the steps for this, the process is, and I think we had chatted about this, each MUD kind of can do their own thing, right? Or not? Is that
So
true or
the
not?
funds is decided by a vote of majority of the trustees.
okay? Sorry.
And so we're going to take it to the March board, our March trustees meeting, and ask them at that time to vote. So at these meetings, we're presenting the
Okay.
information, discussing, asking for a straw poll for y'all to direct your trustee on how to vote in the March trustees.
So it could be 1, 2, 3, none. It's how the trustee votes? Or is it that all of the MUDs just say, yep, let's go ahead and fund these? Or is it on an individual basis, that show of hands, who wants option number 1?
So I think typical, somebody will make a motion to refund it all to the MUDs, and if they get a second, go on like that. So you could go refund, let us keep
Two,
it
but
partial.
yeah.
Yeah,
But it's a majority, but
right.
Majority vote, okay.
so you'd need to have a little straw poll to decide how you want you to vote.
Right.
Trustee.
I'm inclined to pay what's necessary, what we have to, like in the easements, and then refund the rest. Like what needs to actually, especially like giving money away on a temporary easement, like doing something silly like that doesn't make any sense to me.
So that'll be March. We'll do that next month.
Yes, that's like
Mhm,
half a month away,
mhm.
2 weeks away.
No, 3. Right.
Today's the 20th. This is a short month.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be a month. on this one.
Okay.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay, any more questions for Chris or anyone on that?
One more item after y'all, under straw poll.
Want to weigh in on how you feel we should,
Great idea, partial.
so is it, what would deem to be discretionary or
I mean, I think we should,
everything but the
we should.
temporary easements? Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, it is the grit classifier, is that a gotta have?
That's original
Yeah.
design. That, if it's not funded now, it'll be in next year's budget.
Anything that goes into next year's budget that's not paid out of this could actually cause a rating. That's the significance of this decision. Is it pay, you
Pay it now or
agree
pay it
to
later?
Right,
Okay.
And then potentially have to raise.
but if you take the money now for any of those items and that item goes into the next year's budget, that could increase.
Change the cost.
These are the highest priority projects, the gotta haves, correct?
Correct. These are the, there's very little discretionary, I understand, on the temporary construction easements, you know, the way of thought, and we don't know from there, but everything else is need to have. The AC water line is based off of mud direction. That's why it's a need to have, set a direction on that. Keep in mind, though, the AC water line condition assessment, the first testing will be on the town center water line to determine if it needs to move to construction. So if it's deemed that, yes, it needs to go to construction, we're immediately going to come back and say, we need to go ahead and get all these easements taken care of. And so from the information the consultants looked at, preliminaries, thinking it needs to go ahead and move forward. That's why we're approaching with the permanent and the temporary construction easements, just to lock them up now. Additionally, you could authorize the funds to be used to be retained by us, just not used at this point in time. That way we have the funds for the TCEs. Don't have to come back for it. We just can't move forward until we have a little bit more information on the timetable.
Much money, if we, let's just ballpark, we get a third of it back. I mean, interest, what would we have to gain by having the money in our account?
Much interest they would earn on their share if it were in their operating account instead of the company.
The interest rate was 5.55 at the end of January.
Okay.
For next one. Yeah.
In both cases, the money's vested, so the money's allocated to you for the
Being put to
projects.
use, yeah.
Being put to use, but still invested under your pot. So if it's here, it's the same.
Okay.
There might be subtle differences in the investments, which I don't know, but it won't be significant, it won't be appreciable.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, I mean, there's some administrative headaches if we did decide to claw some of it back this year, and potential rate increases if consultant finds something that we gotta pull the trigger faster than we thought.
Plus the time delay of then getting a bond, if we need bonds or cash call, and then finishing out easement acquisition. That's why we're trying to start now, so we can get all the stuff shovel ready. So if someone comes back and says, you need to do it now, and you all agree, we can then just get the bond and move forward in 6 months, rather than get the bond, get the easements, get the TCEs, then go forward 12 to 18 months. So.
I mentioned, I think at the trustee meeting, typically you cannot get the plans approved at all until you have the easements in hand. So that the approvals of those drawings that are 95% done, you wouldn't even be able to achieve until the easements are in hand, usually.
One way to think about this is, just doing some math here, yeah. We are about 16% of this total. Mud 47 is about 16% of the total. The town center easements is, 1.5 out of the 5.1. If half of that's temporary, half of it's permanent, it's about $100,000 we're talking about potentially not spending. Doesn't seem like it's a lot to really fuss about. I
Right,
like the idea, Chris, of saying, yeah, but keep it in your side of the house. Let's or learn more about where the easements are. If it says, hey, get the temporary ones while you have that same person, that same company, that same process, you're already negotiating and you just need one right there just for temporary purposes. But if it's scattered around, it doesn't really have a lot of connection to it, then maybe we'll know more. We'll know more after we see the AC line. It's not an amount of money. I think it's going to really drive a whole lot of value one way or the other. It's more administratively burdensome. At least that's another way to look
Yeah,
at it.
I agree.
That's all.
I agree. There's not a lot of upside to clawing any of it back.
Just some thoughts. Think
That
about it.
would always- Yeah, we don't have a difference.
Yeah.
Like, transfer here, transfer there, we tap
Yeah.
you, we tap for them.
Yeah. So I think it's,
I'm not getting all those easements still, getting all that in order.
okay. All right.
Well, plus the other thing, we spent all this time last year talking about the need to get, some sort of an assessment done on the age of our AC lines and that.
That's happening, right?
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, it's probably the largest line item that's been presented here, but we spent so much time saying, if we spent a little bit of money here and then found out that the age of all of our lines were really pretty good, in the long run, it's saved our money of having to pull it up just because everyone said, well, it's over 50 years old and
Yeah.
other communities were running older than this. So I think would be money, $1.6 million, well worth the money when you look at the big picture. So, I mean, if we had to like my vote on all of these projects, what would be my top one? That one. This is invaluable.
Getting it done.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's invaluable.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time getting to that point. Let's not undo that. please.
Exactly.
Not a rate increase.
Right. But the other thing is that the outcome, even if we get some preliminary stuff that is favorable, that we're learning from doing this particular study, and that we can translate that into communicating to our
Okay.
constituents of, hey, we spent a little bit of money, but guess what we found? And, we're in great shape.
Yeah.
But it's translatable into something that our constituents would go, wise expenditure. And that's what we're looking for.
Okay. Think I have my marching directions.
There you go.
All right, perfect.
Next.
Thank you. Okay.
Prior to the meeting, I sent out this Freeze and Nichols report, technical memorandum. This is a new report that I've not seen before, but after receiving a lot of questions and comments and discussing internally on the wastewater strategic plan, we asked Dan and the consultant to work together to develop a summary of the last 2.5 years worth of wastewater strategic plan conversations, stakeholder discussions, reports, so on and so forth. So this is that summary. So instead of reading about 1,000 pages, if you want the high level, read about 20. What this also does is we had questions about, okay, is the condition assessment report that was done during the wastewater strategic plan the only source of condition related data you have on the plan? What this does on page 10 is it starts listing out some of those previous reports that were done in 2015 that show the condition of the plant, the various basins, various pumps, motors, valves, whatever it may be. So page 10, 11, may go over 12, 12, starts talking about some of the events and studies that led up to the original request to look at that time, the consolidation of facilities, which then turned into where we are today with rebuilding a new wastewater plant. So I think it's a good high-level summary. I've read it a couple times, but it's very good to get you to the key points of why do we need to do this? Why do we do this now? Do you have any history to get us to this? So this does not take place of everything else that was done. It just kind of ties it all together. So wanted to pass it out. We got it. Dan got it done. I think Friday, Thursday, Friday. So not in time for the package, but we got it sooner, but wanted to get to y'all as soon as we could.
So did this come out of all the documents you already had, or are you kind of creating new content here? little bit of both?
A lot of it, it's a little both. So it's pulling a lot from the phase one report, the stakeholder meetings, the all mud director meetings, some of the slides that maybe some additional clarification that maybe wasn't included in those phase one or phase two reports. But it's also bringing the aspect of pre-strategic plan, pre-2021. And like Chris mentioned, those historic reports that do provide more background and content for how we got to where we are today, and additional kind of justification on some of the aspects of the plan and replacement of them to tie into the condition assessment that we did most recently with recent areas. So there is a number of pages that reference the findings of those previous reports.
Well, thanks for doing that.
Mhm.
Right, because that came up in the trustee meeting as well. So appreciate you.
And those reports that are referenced in the tech memo are available to you all now via the Google Drive, and Eric or Shelley could help you locate those. It's an easy folder. But if you want to dig into more than the one-page summary of the findings of that report, the whole reports are available.
Are we able to share this with our constituents, or is this confidential?
Public information.
Yeah, something else I realized actually just sitting here and made a note is I want to get, I've been sending a lot of documents to Eric and Shelley for placing on the Google Drive. This is another one that I want to be able to send along with the AC water line for some of the mud directors that are not in attendance at their mud meetings. And let everybody know, at least the mud director side, that it is available. I think it's something, Garrett would want to see too.
Yeah. Good to know. I appreciate you making that available like that. Okay, we got some homework to do now.
It's the end of our very brief report.
Right.
Good, thank you. Okay. Thanks for that. Okay, item number 10 is discussing the funding alternatives related to said wastewater treatment project.
And we're gonna borrow that tomorrow.
Okay.
We're working on the pro cons and some of the financial analysis to, if you recall, we talked about some working with financial advisor and the attorney to identify what the bottom line would look like under some of the different scenarios, whether it was on the sewer rate or whether water sewer or whether it was taxes, et cetera. So we're running some scenarios on that. And we'll be ready in March. We're expected to be ready in March to present all that.
And will that include looking at whether SJRA issues bonds, the Woodlands MUDs do the bonds? Are you getting into that level as well?
Yeah, roughly the four options would be water and sewer rates, which is, SJRA selling bonds, and then rolling the wholesale rate to the water and sewer rates. So the customer would see in the water and sewer rates. A bond election across all the MUDs, where MUDs would sell all of their own bonds, which is extremely problematic. The rollback tax election, which would put it also on the tax side, but on the M&O side, not the debt service side. So there's a little advantage on that one. And then the fourth is kind of you'd see it on a water and sewer rate, but it would be more of a fee structure instead of a usage structure. So your water bill currently, you have rates. The more water you use, the more you pay. Another idea that we had was just flat rates. Could still be tiered, but
Start building a bank, as it were,
correct.
So you say water and sewer. Here we are doing a sewer plant. Can you charge that against the water use? When you say just water and sewer, you're just kind of clumping that together.
But you also have the AC stuff. So the two.
Yeah, I was just keeping the plant, but so maybe.
We're not, we're putting it all together,
Okay.
because that's the 525 million in overall capital projects that at least are being contemplated right now. So you have some on the water side, some on the sewer side, but generally speaking, I was talking, clumping them together, as you mentioned.
Okay. You guys, SJRA had submitted sorry, I was looking right at you. as- had given us a draft of a supplemental agreement, right? If we were gonna go the direction that SJRA was gonna issue the bonds. When would we want like feedback on that? Probably after March? Or will we have time in the March meeting to talk about that as well, just structurally how that was put together and why it looks the way it does? Because it gets to kind of my question right then. So I'm fine doing that in March or whatever. I just have some questions, actually a bunch of questions.
I mean, working your way through that supplemental agreement would be assuming that you're going down one of those.
Yes, indeed.
Without having seen the four options go.
Right.
So
So shortly after,
I would think
that's something.
logistically, you'd want to see the options first and then decide if it's even worth, pursuing the supplemental agreement. Because eventually you're gonna have to have a supplemental agreement that says how you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that same terminology, water and sewer, is in the supplemental agreement, and it just struck me that it talks about, proceeds from the water and sewer. When we're really doing a sewer project. That's why I asked about what you just said. So I'll hold it, but it'll probably come in pretty closely to that same.
I think it's more semantics because it's the same bill. It's
Yeah.
just a different piece of the same bill.
Yeah. Measured differently, all kinds of stuff.
But we typically refer to it the same.
Yeah.
Water and sewer rates. I know we're.
All right. We'll talk. All right. So that's going to March. Okay, thanks for that. Any updates on the Bear Branch project? We've got.
So for the Bear Branch Drainage Project, we're continuing to work with the consultant, LGA, and finalize their report. One additional item that we've authorized them to move forward with is developing cost estimates for the alternatives for regrading the channel. So once we get that, we'll be able to sit down with the funding partners and be able to compare the benefits of the alternative in terms of how much it may lower the water surface elevation during certain rain events, but also the cost that goes with that. So in the near future, there'll be more to come when we are ready to present those. That's it for that update. Any questions?
Isn't there a meeting out there like? Dan Crenshaw?
Oh,
coming in?
26th.
At the 26th?
Yeah.
So
Photo
that,
op.
That's for the day.
that's
The dam.
related
That's
to.
for the dam, yeah.
After a-
Yeah, I went there, sorry.
Yeah. We think Bear Branch. and
Yeah,
sometimes-
Yeah,
kind of is.
I get it. So yeah, that is.
I said
You know more.
It's kind of on
The
the
dam.
first hole.
Yeah, really. Really.
Easy for me to respond to you because I made the same mistake earlier.
First hole of the general. So, yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Thanks, Dan.
It's a great big water hazard.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay. Thank you for that. Attorney's report. Now I can look your way.
Expected to be here today, but was on a family vacation and they had some travel delays coming back.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
Like the excuse, right?
Forward.
Yeah.
I really under the attendance report, just wanted to update you on the election. So the deadline for submitting a candidate application was last Friday at 5 p.m. So we've been reviewing and processing all the applications that were submitted. Y'all are gonna have a contested election. All of the Woodlands floods are contested except for Metro. And so Shelley, did you pass out? I saw this. Yeah, so she passed out a little list showing, the candidates and, this election is going to be conducted by Montgomery County, because you went joint with the county. And, we have a timetable from them that we're complying with all their different, requirements. We sent them the names for the ballot yesterday. We had to provide them today, the pronunciations, phonetic pronunciations for names that, wouldn't be deemed obvious. Because they do an audio recording for people. So there's all kinds of little things that we're complying with, but, ultimately, once they have the ballots ready, it's really in their hands to run the election. So that's a huge benefit of going joint. But, we will do a ballot position drawing at Woodlands Water on next Monday morning at 10 a.m. So we're working on sending that notice out, should go out tomorrow to y'all about that, but, we'll do a real drawing to determine the order of the names to go on the ballot.
How
But
do y'all do that? Is it put them in a hat?
Mhm.
Shelley.
Yes. It was like a little plastic container.
Yeah, I think they try to like print the names to keep it all really uniform and then fold them the same way, but it is a real drawing to determine the order, and then we'll let the county know. Then the ballots will be prepared, and then from there, they will conduct the election.
And we need some paperwork to sign.
Yes, so last month when you called the election, the order calling, named these two agreements. We just didn't have them ready for signature last month. It's a joint election agreement and election services agreement. These are agreements that Montgomery County, requires that you sign. We just didn't sign them last month because you only have to sign it if you're holding a contested election.
Yeah, so.
Yes, so we'll get this one.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope, that's it for the attorney's report. Unless you have any questions about that.
Questions? Okay, item 12, grant exemptions for taxation for 2024 and the adopting the resolution in connection with that, page 53 in our packet. And there's a table and some information provided in there.
He wanted to talk to your financial advisor and for him to run some numbers. So that's what he's done. But last year you offered a $30,000 exemption for over 65 and disabled, and then a 20% homestead exemption. And the 20% homestead is the maximum that you're allowed to offer, but you can increase your over 65 or disabled exemption if you'd like to.
And so Craig, I think you'd asked for, can we see like the impact of doing one versus another? And so you did that, right?
Excuse me.
What company? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Trevor Konopka, work with Robert W. Barrett. We're close to Adam Cohen in our office. He had a prior engagement, so we couldn't make it this evening. So I'm stepping in for him. So we did pass out these exemption analyses. It's also on page 55 in your packet. Quick reminder, we do come to y'all every year about this time of year to set exemptions. We typically set two exemptions. Homestead exemption, which you all are, as she said, you all are capped at 20%. And then an over 65 and disabled persons exemption, which y'all currently grant a $30,000 exemption, $30,000, yes. And quick run through on the exemption process. Now, the grand scheme of things for the granting the exemptions is to take lower the tax bill for qualified residents. Sorry, excuse me, not residents, qualified households. So you're not double dipping on the over 65 and disabled persons. It's a qualified household. But the whole process of it is, as we grant the exemptions, it decreases your taxable value. And then when your taxable value decreases, you have to shift pennies from your maintenance operation to your debt service tax rate in order to cover that balance you have an obligation to pay off your debt service. So that's kind of how it works. It's as the taxable value, which we bond on, decreases, you need to boost up your debt service tax rate. Where do those pennies come from? They come from your maintenance and operation. So, and that's how we keep your tax rate neutral. So, and this is the example we have for y'all, excuse me, tonight, is a tax rate neutral. So your total tax rate is the same throughout each scenario here. We have 5 scenarios. Each one is a $1,000 increase. It's very minor. With each $1,000 you increase for exemptions, there is an approximate $3,355,000 decrease in your operating surplus. So if about halfway through those lines here, you see operating surplus and deficit, this works left to right here. So with each $1,000 increase, it's approximately $3,300 and the decrease in your surplus. Entail that results in a $2 for every $1,000 exemption. It saves the qualified taxpayer approximately $2 annually. We're kind of splitting hairs here. It's very minor. Obviously it is a board decision, but we wanted to show you these 5 scenarios, working this way all the way up to this.
If we maxed it out, we're giving the residents of Mud 47 about $17,000 from the operating surplus.
Well, so from the operating surplus, you're decreasing it 3,300.
At every $1,000.
Yes. Every $1,000, that's for your surplus. I mean, you're still generating approximately $1.1 million in surplus with each scenario.
The rest of the residents would have to make up that difference that you're giving to the
Right.
for 65.
Right. Yeah, okay.
Still got to come up with the money.
When you said 30,000, I have no idea what that number is,
That is your current exemption that you're.
but I don't know how this works.
That through over time,
I just know my tax bill is a lot less than my neighbors because I have an over 65 exemption.
There you go.
But,
And you own your home, so you have a 20% exemption.
but how does that work? I mean, you have a home valued at $100,000. How does this 30,000 fit into that?
You deduct it from the $100,000.
Tax on 70.
Of the total value of your house.
How much you
How
how
much
much
the
you get
20%
taxed on.
of your homestead first, you take that off, whatever that 20% is out of the 100,000. And then after that, you take 30,000 on top of that, and that's your taxable value.
Wow. Okay.
So in your example, you, instead of paying on 100,000, you pay on 50.
in the 30,000.
The two exemptions.
Over time, the board.
I guess because I'm figuring in my head, my home's worth a lot more than that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be adding up, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm doing well with the
Yeah.
taxes. Okay. That's what was so.
Look at that little yellow sheet that they sent out. It's
Yeah.
right on there, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what's confusing because,
Is it- Sorry.
no, this doesn't, I have to go home and figure out the numbers again.
But I think the message though is you're already at 30. If you moved it up to 31, the resultant to the individual that qualifies is $2
That's
A year.
average
A year.
a year.
So can I ask about the assumptions built into some of this, if I could? So does that assume that everyone who is 65 has filed for the exemption?
So it's based on. So
It
we got
says based on 1,904 over 65 and 41 disabled residents in the district.
There's a whole lot of people haven't applied.
Do we know how many are actually,
This is.
because you have to request the exemption. It doesn't come automatically, right? So the 1904 is based on what we know of the age of people, or how many have actually requested it and been granted the exemption?
It rated 19,
So it doesn't count you.
we had the two
I
together.
turned 65
Well, I
last
know.
week.
I know, but you have.
I'm
it
getting
doesn't-
in.
It doesn't shit.
Yeah.
And you, then you'll be 1905.
I know, I'm getting
There
it.
you
I'm getting my
go.
exemption. I'm so excited.
But no, I mean, and I know a lot of people that are over 65 that have no idea that this exists.
Exactly. That's so
So-
the 19. I know,
But they don't,
I know.
they don't see that. They look at, oh, I owe $39. Wait a minute, I didn't use $39 worth of water.
They get it on their appraisal notices, they, I mean.
No, I
it's
get it.
out there.
I know.
I get it. It's just, you gotta go looking for it.
Make the phone call. I mean, we do everything we can.
No, I get it. I get it.
I'm an over 65 person. I still want exemption. I don't, they don't, they're not cumulative.
Over 65 for just.
Just so to be clear, the math is based on those who would be eligible, not necessarily, our reality might be much less than that. We might have many fewer people. Or this is.
You
only-
might have many more.
Just to say it
You don't
again.
know who's eligible.
Yeah, you might have many more
So this,
people
so this is how many are actual, right? And so you're saying if you gave
have
them,
applied.
went from 30 to 31 against the 1904 and the 41. This is the adjustment you're gonna see roll through your tax schedules and calculations, right? Okay, okay, got you. I got you.
Does it create a bigger administrative headache than the benefit to the resident? I mean, what's involved to, you just slide it up to $35,000? It's that easy, or does
We
it?
send it over to the appraisal district, and when they send out the notice, if we want your exemptions to be on there. So when your preliminary notice, values come over, then it benefits y'all, but then when we load it on, it's just. Yeah. it's
So
limited
it doesn't really
automatically.
create any additional headaches. Okay.
And what was the range said earlier this morning?
Yeah, Jim said earlier that for a developed district like y'all, they typically see, you can answer this, between 10,000 and 30 would be the average for this over 65 disabled. There's a few outliers that offer, I think he said he has one district that offers 100,000, but I would imagine they have a lot of commercial offset in that.
And also the other Woodlands districts, I know Mud 60 met earlier today, they were at 30,000 and they went up to 31,000 this afternoon. 46 is at, 30,500. So you're kind of all in that general realm around 30,000. It's,
We have a chance to be an outlier.
We can go 35.
Let's be exceptional. I say we get
like to creep up. And if you do increase, we like to creep up and increase because you never want to, you can bring it back down. However, it's kind of like a tax rate. You don't want to,
Yeah.
once you lower your tax, you don't want to raise it. Again, it kind of works the same here with the exemptions. If y'all have any more questions, happy to.
It doesn't
happy to
seem
answer.
much.
Folks, tonight.
And we're deferring their developed district till next month, right?
Yes, that's the
Oh,
next
yeah.
time, maybe, but we are gonna defer that. We got the exhibits in your packet, but we got it late last week. We're comparing all the exhibits to the exhibits from last year to just see what changed and then discuss any changes with LJA. So we don't have a chance to do that and get the resolutions ready for the meetings,
Okay.
today and tomorrow, but we'll
Push it to next month.
do that one next month. Jeannie, you had a concern about pushing this one because MCAD, the timing there.
Oh, yeah, the timing with MCAD, we really need to adopt the exemptions next month and no later than next month. If you all don't want to do it today.
On the side, team.
I motion to increase it to 35,000.
Yeah, I'll second that. Let's be an outlier.
So what's on the table is there is no resolution. You've made the resolution, you've seconded,
Go to scenario
We have
5.
resolution.
you have a resolution.
They're talking about the 3.5% now of them being a developed district, which could change this year. Last year you became a 2023, it was your first year of being a developed district. So your maintenance can only go up 3.5%, whereas before you could go up 8% being a developing district. So that's also a change for you. That's under Senate Bill 2. We're gonna review that next month as well.
Yes,
And
but
to see if
based
you're
on
gonna stay
the
the same.
exhibit your engineer prepared, y'all are developed again this year. So we're just.
So you're limited to that 3.5%.
The only reason why you would have switched back to developing would be if you had done a big annexation or something like that to switch you back to being developing. But it looks like
Yeah, that's,
based on their exhibit, you're gonna be developed again.
that's a weird form that you put in it.
It is.
It says everything's been built, right?
So compliant with it.
Yeah.
We had to create that exhibit a few years ago in 2019.
It's a question about 1488 would say, well, no, you can't say yes to that one question. Because there's still something there to be built and water and sewer to be connected, and it says all, it says all the services being done for the, maybe it's the way I was reading it, I didn't,
Yeah.
I know it says 95 and then, okay.
Kind of complicated exhibit, but we'll just confirm that there's no weird change from last year. We're doing that for all of them, comparing the exhibits and but it does look like based on what they filled out, they think y'all are developed again this year. So that's a good point, Jeannie. If you did increase y'all probably won't increase your tax rate, but if you do need to, you're just limited by how much you can increase it without having a rollback election.
Because it's automatic now.
Yeah.
Then it's an automatic rollback election instead of being called. That's the all new under Senate Bill 2.
And it's 3.5% of your current rate. It's not like you can't add, you can't go from 7 to 10.5%. It's, yeah, the maintenance side. Yeah. Okay. So the 530, going from 30 to 35 moves about $20,000, it looks like, from your, of your surplus, operating surplus deficit line, right? 1.153 to 1.136. Or, yeah.
I think it's a great thing just to give breaks to seniors and disabled. I mean, it's,
That's a shift.
They're
It's
struggling.
moving money
Yes,
around. It's
it
saying
is.
this group's not
It
gonna
is.
pay and this other group's going to
Yeah.
pay. That's essentially what you're doing, right?
people that need it.
Yes, I do.
That's
For the record, I'm not 65.
Okay.
okay. I know, or
Okay,
disabled.
so we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor, say aye.
Right,
I'm
here we
opposed.
go.
Okay.
35 it is.
What's that?
35.
It will be, yeah, it carries.
Yep.
Resolution carries at 35.
Yep.
All right. Good discussion, everyone. Thank you. We're not doing the developed, you just said, so I'll save all those questions for that. Consider an act on district's annual customer report. What is that?
Your annual report.
Our handout?
Last year.
That went out last month.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know.
it already went
Well,
out.
what are we doing with it?
It was cool.
We acted on it. We doing it again?
We'll send one out this summer.
Still on the.
It's still on the agenda.
Okay.
We'll
That just threw
we'll
me.
send a summer one out. We'll have plenty to talk about by then.
This.
Yes, we'll have plenty to talk about by then. I believe in
Okay,
communicating
so
with our
I was
people.
wondering where we're doing that. But we're going to talk about communication.
There we go.
There you
Yeah,
go.
all right.
Customer report.
Page 68. Communication report for the month. So last month, I went through some findings from our community survey. I know that we have other ways to measure our performance, and I want to bring some of those statistics forward for you. A little bit of a year and wrap up.
Yeah, that's
If
good.
you will.
Good stuff.
So I've embedded some of these statistics throughout your 3 pages here in the bold black. Houston Chronicle, Community Impact, Woodlands Community Magazine. See on page 68, those are primary outlets for our marketing. Houston Chronicle, that's a digital syndicate, so dozens of websites that we advertise on. Across those websites, we have 28,000 engagements, so that's 28,000 folks that we know looked at our ad, or interacted with, scrolled over it, clicked on it, something. And that the rate of that engagement is better than industry standards, so that performed well. Community impact, primarily that's about the print edition that goes out each month to all folks in the Woodlands. That monthly readership is 160,000 times 12. That's pretty important for us. We've been doing a 4-page ad in there steadily. Likely doing for at least in the near future. Woodlands Community Magazine, that went out to 42,000 homes every month. We had a 2/3 page ad in that all year, as well as an article each month and a full page ad in the current edition. We saw some of these successes translated into website visitation. So we look at page views as a way to assess visitation. We had a 32% increase in page views over 2022. We had a 48% increase over our previous 5-year average. So a nice uptick there. And I think somewhat surprisingly, we had 115,000 unique visitors for the year.
Wondering who are these people?
Yeah, well, they're looking at us.
Like every man, woman, and child.
We'll take them. Gladly. And we did do a lot of work on the website, redesigning it, trying to make it more navigable. Do some things to get important information up front for folks, and continue on that work in progress. But I think we've made some good strides. Water bill, you see the current bill ad there, and the upcoming bill ad in March. You'll see that's water quality. That's the shift in focus. That's our next quarter. So we do that every month. That bill out on the back there. And then Woodlands Water Weekly there at the bottom. We had a nice consistent 57, 56, 58% open rate right in there every week. And so that translates into us reaching 39% of our total accounts each week with that tool. So there's a lot of information in there. So we feel good about that we're reaching a lot of folks steadily with a lot of information. That comes in about 20% above industry average. Email.
That's great.
We made some strides in social media. You know, we added Nextdoor in the fall. We'll be looking at additional platforms this year. On Facebook in particular, last year, we a little over doubled our reach. So that's the number of folks that saw our stuff, not that follow us, but that saw our material. So that more than doubled over 2020.
Then are you boosting ads or that's just organic?
We haven't been, but we're gonna be experimenting with that more. Yeah, see what we get. WaterSmart, that's kind of a gauge of, you know, behavior, right? Folks acting on the information you give them. So we did see a continued increase in WaterSmart registrations. We did see that rate of increase drop from 2022. So we went from 241 on average registrations per month in 2022 to 181 a month in 2023. Now we know it's going to get harder and harder to sign people up, the more people sign up.
Sure. Saturated.
But we're encouraged that it's continuing to trend upward, and I'm feel really good about some of the strategies we have in place to increase that rate of registration. Talk about those as they come on board.
Are you surprised the commercial was 20%, so much lower than the residential? It just seems odd to me that business wouldn't be watching their water a little bit more than a resident.
It's disappointing. I'm surprised.
Yeah, okay.
And the challenge with commercial is we're much more homogeneous as a residential block, all individuals.
Yeah.
Pretty homogeneous when you compare us to anybody from a McDonald's to a hospital. And who we connect with and what their particular arrangement is, and a whole slew of factors. So challenging, but that's a pretty low number, and we need to figure it out. So that.
Are commercial accounts considered landlord accounts also? Rental property? Or is it's business?
Business.
It's businesses.
And they're probably larger, right? I mean, there's more water running through a commercial meter probably than a residential meter. So if there is a problem, it's going to be a bigger problem. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And more visible. And by that, I mean, you know, we struggle with defined irrigation schedule compliance. We're going to be taking that on here as spring comes. And so that's another one of our concerns when we deal with commercial properties is getting them on board so that following rules we're all supposed to be following, and they're not setting a bad example for the rest of us. Why am I following the defined irrigation schedule issue? So
Yeah, it's raining and the sprinklers are on and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay.
another issue.
Mhm.
Okay, and then I just wanted to touch on Holloway Infrastructure Communication consultant. So we've been working with Holloway since fall. They completed an assessment of our communications and of STRA's communications. We reviewed that assessment. That assessment has informed their strategic plan. PEC, Education Committee, has reviewed that strategic plan. And you're providing comments right now to Holloway. They'll incorporate those. We'll tune up that strategic plan, and we're hoping implementation will begin in the next 6 weeks. You updated on that? Thank you.
John, good work. Thank you.
I just had a couple of things to update on the Gulf Coast Water Conservation Symposium. Is going to be Thursday. Myself and 2 directors are going to that, so it should be a good event. And then just want to give you an update on the One Water Task Force. It's a group that worked on some drainage things a few years ago after Harvey. It's kind of died off. Last year, the township voted to at least support the recreation of that. And so behind the scenes, we've been working on building really a focused goals list that that group would tackle if and when it did get recreated. And so then we took that and met with some individuals, leadership of the township, to kind of go over those goals. And so things are moving forward. It looks like ideally we'll get an official startup, hopefully here pretty soon. Probably gonna rename it, just to kind of change it from what it was.
Refresh.
Yeah. So that's moving along, and that's all I had.
All right. Any other questions for Eric? No. Number 17. Authorized review of the water. I didn't see this on the Google Drive.
So
Or
the
what's-
CRNS 35 is on the Google Drive.
Maybe it's somewhere tucked away. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't in our monthly folder, so it must be somewhere else.
But it's on the Google Drive, so y'all can take a look at it. But the Texas Administrative Code does require that you adopt a water conservation plan and drought contingency plan, which y'all have done. They also require that you review it every 5 years. So the last time a full review was done was in 2019. So we're at the 5-year mark to do a review. Woodlands Water has actually already initiated that process. So they'll do a review. If they have any revisions, then they'll update the policy accordingly, and we'll present that to y'all in a few months. We'll need to have it done in May.
If you want to review anything, you can do the old one, that's that one, but the new one, which may or may not have many significant changes, will be ready probably in the April timeframe
Okay.
for adoption prior to the May submittal that it is submitted. We'll be working with SGRA to coordinate that as well, because our drought contingency plan has to align with SGRA's. So we need,
We can figure out where that is, and just on our drives. Shelley, that'd be great. Okay, thanks.
we just need concurrence that, for us to,
This is a motion we're acting on.
we don't even need a motion, just concurrence.
Concur,
We're
authorize you to
there you go.
review. Okay, yeah, okay, done. Okay, trustee report. You want me to do it? Oh, go ahead.
We've covered the majority of the items, to be honest. There was an update Arthur Breedhoff gave from Region H. One of the things that the trustees did take action on is agreement to endorse. So somewhat a long story, but there's a group called the San Jacinto River Flood Planning Group. And years ago, the trustees fought pretty hard to create a seat that would represent this area. That was the upper watershed seat. At that time, Dr. Neil Gaynor was appointed to that seat. He has recently notified the regional planning group that he's going to step down. And so the trustees heard a recommendation for a candidate to be endorsed by the trustees, which the trustees agreed to do. That endorsement was for Imelda Diaz, individual, which there was her resume was reviewed. And there was a member of the public that actually gave a separate endorsement as well to the trustees. Ultimately, the planning group will need to look at additional candidates most likely, and then make their determination, but that was done. Let's see here. I think that was pretty much it.
I think there was a question about, let's see, well, there was a comment about the new GM coming in, at a meeting in Conroe. We did talk about the excess funds. We already touched on that. Then people were voting, 21 open positions, 47 candidates or something like that on the, for the coming up. Holloway report, which we went through. Region H was here to talk to us a little bit about Region H. Pretty quiet meeting, actually. All right, thanks. Thanks, Eric. Do we need to go to closed session? Okay, good. We don't need to
Man.
reconvene. Public's not here any still. Okay, so any topics for next month's future meetings? Y'all?
We're good.
Okay, and we are adjourned.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.